Welcome to your June 10th edition of Off the Mat. We got a lot planned for you guys today. We're going to recap Tough 13, and we're also going to go into UFC 131, which is going down tomorrow night, right after this. Well, welcome back, guys. I'm Bernard Oliver. I'm joined by John Urquillo and Jeremy Hurt. I don't know about y'all, but it's been a pretty busy week for me this week. How have y'all's weeks been going?
TGIF. Thank God it's Friday.
Jeremy, how's your week been going?
I'm not good with acronyms. I'm still confused by what he had to say. But
well, yeah.
Weekend,
yes. And this weekend we have UFC 131. But before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and back up to last weekend and talk about the Tough 13 finale. Now, the fights on this card, they pretty much kind of delivered. I didn't get to see a lot of the fights because, some things were going on. I missed from after Kingsbury on, but, I got the highlights and things from everybody else. So, first, Chuck O'Neal against Chris Cope was, I don't even know what to call that. It was embarrassing. I'm embarrassed that I picked Chuck O'Neal to beat Chris Cope. Chris Cope came out and showed the world that he's ready to go into the UFC. John, what was your take on this fight?
Well, I just love Cope's enthusiasm, his work ethic. This is a guy who's been counted out the entire show since day one. And he comes in here, he goes against Chuck O'Neal, which, like you guys were saying, just so disappointing to see his performance. He had one of the bigger mouths talking about all the things he could do. Chris Cope just outworked him, outperformed him, and he really did show Dana that he deserves to be in the octagon and can really gather a big group of fans to get behind him.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jeremy, you and John both picked Cope. Is this how you saw the fight going, just total domination, or did you see it going a different way?
Oh, I absolutely saw it going this way. Like I said before, I wasn't sure if Chris Cope was better at any one thing than Chuck O'Neal, but I thought he was a better fighter when the fight starts. Mm-hmm. And, Cope's evolved. He was a vastly different fighter in this fight. His stand-up was so much more competent in this fight than it's been in the past. And, yeah, he was better than Chris Cope at the stand, or better than Chuck O'Neal at the stand-up, and a better fighter on fight day. And so, yeah, it was what I expected in the sense that I thought Cope would go out there. I thought that he'd have more heart. I thought that he'd bring the fight. I thought that he would, do what he's always done, use the underhooks against the cage to control position and grind out a win. I wasn't necessarily disappointed in Chuck O'Neal, though, because I never believed in Chuck O'Neal. I watched the show. I never saw anything from Chuck O'Neal. Even in the fights that he won, I never saw anything on the show that made me think that guy's a legitimate fighter. To me, he doesn't bring it when he comes to fight at all. And, John's right. Before every fight, Chuck O'Neal told us about all the wonderful things he was going to do, and this is going to be the most amazing Chuck O'Neal. If you thought I was good before, just wait till this time. And then he does nothing.
Luck of the Irish. Well, I guess he's got a good career at nutritionist going. He actually helped Charlie a lot, But UFC, I'm not seeing Chuck O'Neal doing too great in the UFC. Maybe he'll come back and come with something, but he just didn't get better throughout the show, and he didn't get better. He definitely didn't get better in front of that big crowd. Maybe he got nervous. Maybe it was a lot of things, but he doesn't seem like he's on that level, and I don't see it happening.
Again, a lot of credit to Chris Cope.
Yes.
That was a very different fighter than what we saw.
Cannot wait to see Chris Cope in the future, guys. But moving on, we're going to talk about Kingsbury versus Maldonado. Now, this fight kind of surprised me a little bit. I'm a fan of Kingsbury. I knew he was going to come out, but I had never seen Maldonado fight. I had read a lot of things about him. He has a very strong chin, which he showed. And Kingsbury was laying into Maldonado, and Maldonado was just taking it at every turn. John, what was your take on this Kingsbury-Maldonado fight?
Well, like you said, the newcomer, he can pack a punch, and that's just exciting to have a young athlete coming into possibly getting a good UFC build-up behind him with a guy like Guida on the card, and he's showing a chin like that. It's really impressive. He didn't win the fight, out-wrestled. Kingsbury did a very good job of setting the precedence of the fight, but seeing just how impressive the new guy was, he just kept coming at him, and you got to respect that. And I think the more fights he gets under his belt in the UFC, he's going to have a much better career.
Jeremy, we were talking about before the show how huge Kyle Kingsbury looked before the fight, and he just looked like a specimen. What was your take on Kingsbury and his attack on Maldonado?
Oh, absolutely. He's a large man for that weight class. I think they said he was 6'4", and I mean cut like Aldo. I mean he's a very impressive specimen from a physical aspect. All the credit in the world to Maldonado, but this is a guy I think you got to keep an eye on Kyle Kingsbury because he's a guy that's improved a lot. He's a guy that has shown he can win in different ways. He can win a slugfest. He can come out and knock you out in the first minute. You know, he can do a lot of different things. The game's not there yet. You know, he's not. Don't be looking for him to have a title shot in the next year or two. But he's going to get there. This is a guy to remember 3-4 years down the road, definitely.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Kyle Kingsbury, and can't wait to see more from him in the future. But moving on, we're going to go to a fight that I am so sad that I did not see. I was getting texts from Jeremy during the fight. The Anthony Pettis and Clay Guida fight was amazing, so I've heard, and I missed it, of course. Probably up for Fight of the Year, and of course I missed it. So, John, what was your take on Anthony Pettis' loss to Clay Guida?
Well, my main man, Clay Guida, always, if you're a fan of MMA, watch every fight he's in. This guy is Mr. Entertainment, okay? He's like The Rock. He's electrifying. He just goes out there and
You're going to give him rock status?
He just fights and he won't quit. And every time he's out there, it's a show. Everybody loves it. Blood everywhere. You know, you're just going crazy. And this time, you know, at this beginning of this fight, you know, it was a grappling showcase, moved around. Kind of little surprised that Pettis couldn't win one of those rounds, you know. But, you know, I got to give it up to Guida. He just outperforms, you know, and when he gets across from a guy in that cage, you know, he just takes care of business.
Jeremy, now, the striking of Anthony Pettis did not stand up to the wrestling of Clay Guida like I thought it might. What do you see for the former WEC champion, Anthony Pettis, in the future?
Anthony Pettis isn't going anywhere. I mean, first of all, I said on last week's show that I thought Guida would win. I didn't say I don't think that he's necessarily like a greater fighter than Pettis. It's matchups. Matchups make fights. Anybody knows that. Pettis will continue to evolve. He'll continue to take those next steps to continue to round his game up. He's going nowhere. I mean, the guy is a fantastic fighter, just outstanding on his feet.
Absolutely.
He's got probably the most famous moment maybe in MMA history at this point, you know, the way he closed out the WEC. And he's not going anywhere. He could live off that moment for the rest of his life. He'd get 30 more UFC fights off that moment and lose them all. But, you know, that's not the story of Pettis. He's going to bounce back from this. You know, everybody loses. It happens to everyone eventually. And, you know, now he's tasted that. And, you know, he's tasted it before. But, you know, now he's tasted it on the big stage with the lights on. How do you come back? That's always the question. That's the determining factor in every fighter's career. How do they respond when they lose a fight, and especially a decision like that? And fair is fair, because we've had this conversation many times. I thought Pettis did good work from the bottom. I thought he did great work from the bottom. And I think that if he didn't deserve a round, he at least was very, very close on all the rounds. And I think fair is fair. You got to say he did work from the bottom. It was an outstanding fight. You know, it's one of these fights. Like I said, you don't have to have a brawl. You get two guys that are willing to fight for position and fight when you get your position. You can have a great, great fight on the ground, and that's what we saw in this fight.
Right on. And moving on to the last fight before we go into our break, Ramsey versus Tony, the actual finale of The Ultimate Fighter, went exactly like you guys called it. Tony took out Ramsey, knocked him out, actually. I did not see, can't say I didn't see him getting knocked out, because I definitely thought that was a possibility. But I thought he was going to put up a little bit more of a fight than that. He didn't. Jeremy, we're going to get your take on this first.
Well, I'm not even, if I'm going to be entirely honest, I'm not entirely sure if I did pick Tony in the end. I know that I waffled back and forth on this.
A little bit.
But, Tony Ferguson's got great, great hands. I think that's the moral of the story. And really, go beyond that. The real moral of the story, the underlying foundational fact of this fight is that athletes win fights. And Tony Ferguson looks like an athlete when he's in the octagon.
John, now I believe that the real best person in the house actually won, and I'm really happy about that. Is that how you feel? Do you feel the best person won?
Absolutely, I do. He wasn't a fan favorite, kind of a jerk in the house. Didn't have very many friends, anybody to rely on. But it kind of turned him around and made him realize what he was there for the competition. It's to get a spot in the UFC, and he did absolutely that. Another thing in this fight, he really showcased his wrestling ability. A lot of people haven't seen that. He's stood up most of the time and really, kind of pounded everybody. But, like he did in the end of this fight, walks away with a knockout. He's a very impressive specimen. I think he's going to give people trouble when he moves into that professional stage.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of fighters are going to, not a lot, but a couple of good guys are going to come off this show and get contracts. Of course, Tony's got one. I see Chris probably getting one, Chris Cope getting one. Shamar, Dana doesn't like Shamar, but he did win his match. I don't know where that's going to go. Shamar might make it. Maybe somebody will coach him up on his striking. I see a couple of good guys coming out, maybe a few more guys. Ramsey.
I see two, honestly, and I don't think Ramsey will be sticking around. I really don't. I think that you kind of seen somewhere close to his ceiling, if I'm being honest.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't think he has any more potential?
I mean, a little. He's not ever going. I mean, you look at what he brings to the table. He's not ever going to be a guy that contends in that division or really that brings fans back. In my opinion, I think Tony will.
That's a valid opinion.
And I think Chris, because Dana White, Joe Silva, they love guys like Chris Cope, a guy that will come into a fight as the underdog and fight his heart out, win, lose, or draw every single time. Absolutely. They love that. Those are my two guys. I think you'll see Tony Ferguson and Chris Cope for some time. The rest of them.
All right, well, guys, when we come back, we'll be talking UFC 131. There's a lot of up-and-coming fighters on this card. There's a lot of legends on this card. Right after the break. John Creel to my right and Jeremy Hurt to my left. Guys still doing good? Doing good?
Yeah, so far.
Yeah, I completely noticed that.
Well, anyway, we're going to head to this UFC 131 card. Now, I have a fighter that I'm very interested in. I don't know if you guys have been ran by Jason Shotgun Young. Have y'all run by him yet? He's kind of new. He's coming, from the UK.
One of the hidden gems out of the BK.
I don't know if he's going to be a hidden gem. You know how I am with British fighters.
Yeah.
Dan Hardy's the only one I like, and he's not a good fighter. I like him because he's Dan Hardy. He has a lot of personality. As a fighter,
He's a good fighter.
But he can't wrestle, though.
He can't beat a wrestler.
Exactly. And Shotgun Young is a great fighter. He's a great up-and-coming dude. I'm really excited about this fight. But his last 3 fights, he's lost by submission, which is true, to UK fighters. I don't know what it is about the British. They don't train wrestling or something.
They just like to stand up and smack each other.
But Poirier I hope that's how you say his name. We were talking about that before the show. Pretty sure it's Poirier. Jeremy, with the world-renowned knowledge there, telling me that before the show. Poirier is a great all-around fighter. And for someone who can wrestle against somebody who can't wrestle, you can pretty much tell how this fight's going to go. But, John, you're the analyst. I want you to tell me how you think this fight's going to go.
Well, with two guys that are really trying to prove themselves, it's going to come down to who really wants it more. Training is a big part of it. I'm not a big into either of these guys. Don't know how big their camps are, what kind of support they have. But when you're trying to make a statement and trying to get yourself a contract and nobody knows your name, there's only one way to get there. So I think it'll be a good fight. At least both of these fighters we're gonna see who really wants to make the UFC.
Jeremy, now what's your take on this fight and who do you think is gonna win?
It's kind of I agree with John 100%. It's one of those things where at this kind of stage in their career, you don't know who they're working with, what they're working on. It's hard to really kind of say in this kind of situation without knowing exactly what their camp looks like. You know what I mean? That said, I guess I'll go with Poirier just because he's got A quality. He beat Grisby. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm going pretty deep with this.
I don't know.
A little on the spot.
Honestly, though, there are tendencies. You track tendencies. 3 of his 11 fights, he's lost by submission. I mean, that's not encouraging whenever you're stepping on the big stage.
Not at all. Well, moving on, we're going to talk about Maia and Munoz.